I'm pleased to welcome you to the third of our 4 training sessions on a timely topic of engaging volunteers in a world that has changed forever. And my name is Nathalie Lafrenière. I'm the Regional Director for the CSS Regional Resources for CCSN. And I'm happy to introduce Laurie Godlip and the Godlip Consulting joining us today for the third of the 4-part series dedicated to volunteer management. And I will let Laurie introduce herself in just a moment. So in the third slide, I would just like to take a moment to acknowledge that we are a meeting on the unceded territory of the Algonquin Anishinaabe people. We honor the land and the peoples of Algonquin Anishinaabe, whose ancestors have lived on this territory since time immemorial and whose culture and presence have nurtured and continue to nurture this land. We honor all First Nations, Inuit, and Métis people, their elders, their ancestors, and their valuable past and present contributions to this land. Miigwech. So welcome to our Engage series, where we offer professional development opportunities to build capacity within organizations and the sector. Our sessions will be recorded and shared on our online knowledge hub for CSS member organizations. And you can visit our website at communityhomesupport.ca/members to discover any documentations, reports, and resources that help you and your organization make informed decisions and enhance programs and practices in community support services. So now over to you, Laurie.
Thank you, Natalie. So it's a pleasure to be here again for the third session. A few housekeepings on my side. So I'll give you a little bit of history about myself for those that this is the first presentation that they're participating in. So my background, expertise, and experience has been more than 30 years of managing volunteer programs. I'm based out of Toronto. I have built and delivered and managed both local, regional, provincial, and national volunteer programs. I basically spent my whole career working in volunteer management. I can't even tell you how many years ago, maybe about 10, 15 years ago, I started kind of challenging the profession. We're in a profession that changes and doesn't change, and we need to change. And now especially, and this workshop is one of those that you really need to kind of grasp the idea that how we market volunteers is very different now than we did, and we'll get into that in the presentation. But, I started to write these articles. The articles turned into workshops, so working full time, then doing workshops. And I've taught, I don't even know, thousands of administrators of volunteers, as well as volunteers, as well as boards and directors on multiple topics regarding volunteer engagement, volunteer management, risk, strat development, all types of topics. So I've been there, done that, done what you're doing. Couple things. So you have on the slide my email address, my website that has tons of articles, and my podcast. So I took some of my articles, some of my workshops, and condensed them into about 10-minute snippets of knowledge transfer. So you're welcome to look into those. Feel free to reach out to me after the fact. I try and do what I can, in a presentation, but right now I'm kind of in the abyss of staring at myself. So it's really hard when you do these virtually. So if you have any questions or concerns, feel free to reach out. With regards to the slides are a guide for me. So as I said in my previous workshops, I'm okay if I didn't follow the slides. So, when you do the evaluation, says you didn't follow the slides, I'm good with that because it's a guide for me. It's not a, I'm not here to teach to follow slides. I try to be as engaging as I possibly can. The first part of the presentation, like I said, I'll be presenting, but I may leave a little bit more time so we can have some discussion, because I think my favorite topic in volunteer engagement is the recruitment marketing side. That is my passion. I have a degree in it from university, and I just find this is the creative side of your brain where nothing is off the table. A little snippet on the other side, my other life, my other career, I also am a field liaison officer for Elections Canada. So I manage and support 10 ridings in Toronto for the federal election process. So that's the retirement plan. All right, so let's get started. So interesting when I say the topic, because the topic in this particular case is really is what you're selling. So what your perception of what the role is, really what people want to buy. So you're going to kind of change your thinking in here and put on that creative hat that says volunteerism is a product. Okay, because it is a product. It is something that you're selling. We have the underlining uh, community engagement, helping each other, like that, all of that's there, but you've got competition, and you have to connect with potential volunteers based on a set of criteria. And we're going to talk about all that today. But there's no science to it. And that's why I shifted the thinking from recruitment, because I don't believe we're recruiting. We're way past. To me, recruitment was a 20-year-old word, right? You recruit for the army. You recruit for certain things. This is about getting your message out and about engaging people. And marketing is about a relationship built, right? Recruitment is, I have a need, I need to fill the need, we're going to recruit somebody to fill the need. This is about more than that. So that's a component of it, but it's about getting your organization recognized, messaging out there, talking about value, benefits, impact, so that maybe somebody doesn't want to volunteer for you now, but they may keep you in mind in the future. Or they really liked an article or something that you put on your website and it sparks something. We want volunteers to be part of the conversation. So we don't market alone. So think about that concept is, are you actually selling something that people want to buy? So for a perfect example, and we talked about this in the last couple of presentations, is the concept of Meals on Wheels and driving. So as we all know that in the past while, there's been articles in the paper, there's some buzz about this. It is a area of volunteer engagement that is transforming, and not in a good way, right? And it's part of the response to what's going on there, or like what's going on in the environment. So we have to look at things like that. Like, are these roles, I know they're very important to your organizations, but are they roles that are sustainable? Or how can we look at these roles and see how we add value to them, or provide a benefit that makes it important for them? You have to so you have to take a step back when you're talking about marketing. You have to go backwards and you have to look at, who are the volunteers? So who do we have access to, right? In our community, what is available to us? And it really is a strategic plan. So you kind of start with, who's around, what kind of volunteers are there? This is just a list. I'm sure the list is bigger for a lot of people, but I can tell you that volunteers are better educated than they were, have access to more information than they ever did before, because historically, the only access they had to you was your presentation, your volunteer display, your brochure, your flyer. Now it's almost self-directed. So they see something, then they start, we call it the deep dive, and they start looking at other things that then eventually gets to your website, and then they start digging down into your website. So they're actually directing what information they want to look at. It's about understanding who our volunteers are, or potential volunteers are. It is an analytical process. Our volunteers are smarter. They're more savvy as to, depending on who they are and what their expectations are. But we're dealing with all different kinds of volunteers, and therefore our marketing plan is not a one-size-fits-all plan. So keep that in mind. You may have to do different plans based on the target audience that you're looking at. So your approach to youth may be very different to your approach to people that are not working, or approach to new Canadians, or approach to newly retired. So yeah, it's not a one-size-fits-all plan, but you got to create a plan. I'm a big fan of actually coming up with a marketing plan. The trends that we are looking at, and again, I've talked to that in previous workshops, but here are the ones related to marketing. Technology, huge, huge trend. If you're not active, if your website is not up to date, if your volunteer page doesn't really have a lot of information. The trend is people are that they're it's like dating. They're scoping you out. Social media is a huge trend and is going to become more and more important for volunteer engagement as well as marketing for volunteers. That is our future. You've got to keep that in mind. And as a field, the not-for-profit field is not in the forefront of this. Okay, it's something that's used like, for to sell Coke, Pepsi, but we're not doing it. We're not doing it that well, and we're not doing it often enough. Volunteers do want project-based short-term. So there is a trend for more engagement, less timeline. So that concept of minimum 1 year expectation is actually a deterrent for many people to get engaged. And not to say that they wouldn't stay beyond a year, they don't want to commit ahead of time. Virtual volunteering is a trend that we need to look at. We need to consider what we can do that is both face-to-face, virtual, and hybrid. And it may not just be the actual volunteering, it could be how we support our volunteers as well. Skill-based volunteering is becoming a more prominent again. A lot of people have early retired. COVID, the economy, all kinds of things have come into place. And a lot of people have decided to shift careers, not work full-time anymore, but they've got all these skills that they still want to keep active and hone in on. And this is a particular market segment that we need to tap into. And coming down the future is going to be AI. So we're just starting to learn about artificial intelligence and how it's going to affect volunteer programs. But I believe it's going to be a tool for marketing recruitment, ways to develop role descriptions through AI, build recruitment plans, so even things like caricatures, memes, video marketing, all kinds of ways to engage people. And it's going to be the need for more visual marketing to get the interest of volunteers. The hidden market. So we have mass marketing, we have target marketing. Mass marketing is great for, I call it put out the fishing net and just bring them in. They're great for one-off events. So if you're doing a walk, a run, a barbecue, those are great mass marketing tools. That's when you're using more of a larger, like a volunteer recruitment site, local papers, things like that, Facebook pages. But you have to consider when you're doing mass marketing, you're screening out people. So you're spending a lot of time screening people out because you don't know who you're getting in the process. I encourage that hidden market. So what do I mean by that hidden market? These are people that you're connected to, or these are sectors that we never really thought of before. So for examples, associations. Did you know that there are, I think, 4,000 associations in Ontario? There's an association for everything. And the focus of associations are like-minded people. So based on the skills and the role that you're looking at, then you think about where can I reach those people? You yourself are kind of an association. You are like-minded organizations that do common things. Last week, I taught a group that are retired educators. So anybody in the education system, and it's a member-based support system. But these are these hidden markets that we can tap into. People that we're already connected to, but we don't realize that we're connected to. So your donors, your suppliers, your vendors, consider the guy that is delivering water to your office every single week, knows who you are, understands what you do, UPS person who comes in. So people that you're already connected to that understand what you do, clients, families. I suggest you take the time and think about, did I give you the slide? Yes, I did. Okay. It's something a concentrated circle, so I'll explain it out later. Okay, but consider the hidden market, because I think there are gems in that market, right? And again, it starts with, what are you looking for? Okay. But just remember, doing this, never lower your initial screening standards, document your interviewing and screening, determining the protocol. So even as you're building your marketing plan, you're also kind of wearing a risk management hat at the same time. Okay. It starts with the position description. So we look at basically, what do we need a volunteer to do? And then, you build the prescription, you build the description, and focusing on things like the qualifications that are a must versus the qualifications that are nice to have. I've seen role descriptions that have like so many qualifications, and I look at them and go, okay, these are full-time jobs, right? And so a volunteer will look at this and go, yeah, no, this is just way too much responsibility. So you have to kind of break down what it is that you're looking for in a role, because that's what's going to direct you into how are you going to market, who are you going to market, who's your target, what are you saying to them. So the difference between the role description, which is the focused on the task, versus the marketing description, which is focused on the we want to have you join us. So an example, one of the things that I teach and I encourage is that on your website, you're not putting your whole role description on there, because it's just the risk of you screening somebody out is higher than having that conversation. So the actual role description for marketing purposes, it's the sell point, right? It's that elevator speech. It's the nibble, what's going to get people to be engaged. So, but you got to start by building the role, and then you kind of take out the value, the benefits, the impact, and that's the marketing piece, right? So, think about a product, think about a bottle of Coke, right? We all know what it does, right? It quenches your thirst. It's a liquid. It's got all these things, but what are they selling? They're not selling that. They're selling something else, right? So there's a bit of savviness to this, and a lot of creativeness to it. So consider, I've always wondered why you decided to be a dog. I was fooled by the job description. So like, again, you want to make sure that the role that you're marketing is attractive, but also don't go too far off that it actually doesn't make any sense when you get to the actual screening process, that what you're selling is not really what it is that they have to commit to. Okay. So you start when your marketing strat plan is by doing a SWOT analysis. And we talked about SWOT analysis in other parts of the volunteer management side of things. But the SWOT analysis while wearing the marketing hat is looking at things like, what are our strengths to engage volunteers? So what do we do well? What do we support people as far as the volunteer role? So what it is that they're getting out of it. So we're really, heavily vested in the community. We provide excellent training programs. The volunteers are going to learn lots of these skills. We have a strong retention program. Our volunteers support each other. The list of the things that make you strong. And then the opportunities. What could volunteers do? And this is the part that I find a lot of people struggle with, because they're used to volunteers doing a bucket of things. But I'm encouraging organizations to look beyond that. So things like, have you ever actually looked at your own program and said, okay, I don't have time to do this? Well, maybe there's a volunteer opportunity here. Or I've always wanted to build a self-supporting training program for volunteers. Or I've always wanted to take my training program and turn it into a virtual session. Like, what are these opportunities that you think could be interesting for volunteers? Because, like I said, research is showing that some of the traditional volunteer opportunities are not as attractive to volunteers anymore. So we have to kind of look at, how do we engage volunteers in different ways? Who else in your organization could benefit from an opportunity? So I'll give you an example. I had a volunteer that had retired from a large gas and oil company, and he had applied for whatever the role is. But when we got to interview process, I started to see things differently, and I kind of stopped the interview, stepped back and said, what did you do for a living? And so he started to explain to me that he was in charge of the whole self wellness program for like 1,000 employees. And I went, wow, like, okay, I'm seeing something here. And I had a conversation with my HR person who just loved the concept. And I connected them, and he actually ended up building this whole wellness program for volunteers and staff while in Florida because he was retired. So looking at different opportunities, that's the whole kind of wearing that marketing hat. And then the weaknesses are things that, internally, what you can't do, like where you're weak at. And threats are those outside things. So for example, like I said, Meals on Wheels, there's a major threat out there right now that you cannot control. You cannot control the price of gas. You cannot control the crazy drivers out there. You cannot control people's, aging volunteers that may not be um, as good a driver as they used to be. You cannot control the fact that people don't want to drive. You can't change that. So you have to look at what can we do that's a little bit different. So you do the SWOT analysis part of your strategic plan. And then you have to look at what's going on out there. So technologically, I just said that, in a prior slide, this is a plus for us. We can reach anybody now. You can go into LinkedIn and connect with a senior manager, an executive director, a influencer. Like, you have access to people we did not have access to 20 years ago. Right. So there's a whole world going on there. And I kind of like matchmaking. You are matchmakers. That's what this role is. It's matchmaking. So technology is a phenomenal tool that we have access to, but we're also going up against things like the economics of the world, right? And what's going on. How are people connecting? So socially, again, depending on the generation, that has an effect on how they connect with you, how they want to connect in their volunteer work, how they want to be supported, what tools they're using. So, like, for example, my son, who's 26 years old, says Facebook is for old people. He does not go on Facebook or to sell your car, right? So I understand that. And so, I'll say something to him that I don't do Facebook. But so you have to understand what your audience is on, right? Are they on Instagram? Are they on Facebook? Are they LinkedIn? Are they on Snapchat? And you need to figure out how to use these tools if you want to reach certain people, like especially university students. They're on their phones 24/7. So at minimum, your website needs to be attractive to them, right? And then everything else that's around this. So it's all part of the thinking process in terms of the strategic plan. Then you create the work plan, the marketing work plan. So you set the goals. What are we trying to achieve? We want to engage, we want to market these certain roles. We need to get, I even put numbers on it, 10 volunteers, over a period of 3 months. And then we look at, so who's my audience? So again, like I said, go back to the role. This is what we need volunteers for. Where can we find those volunteers in abundance? And you build out a brain dump, right? And then you look at who, or is there somebody you're connected to? And then the next question is, the strategy is, how am I going to reach these people? And what is the tactic? Is it a phone call? Is it an email? Is it LinkedIn? Is it a text? Is it the public library? Is it a volunteer display? So I'm not devaluing or saying, like, your community best. In smaller communities, face-to-face is always the best approach, right? And then if there's a budget or so, if you have a budget for that, most people don't actually have a budget. And then evaluation. You need to look at what your success rate is. So for example, you can ask your marketing person or your tech person how many hits your volunteer page is getting. If you're getting no hits, so you have all this content on your volunteer page, you've got your home page, and then you start scrolling down, and if there's minimal hits, then something's not there, right? So you have to look at it, because your website is your dating page. I call it match.com of the volunteer side of things. So you create a work plan. And then you need to think about, these are the kinds of questions that you need to be asking yourself. Who can do this role? What does the ideal volunteer look like? So who would be a great volunteer for this? What skills do we need to have? What's mandatory versus what skills would we like to have? What is the message we want to get out there? So things like, we need your help. We need you. I don't like those. They're very passive, negative kinds of messages out there. So I want you to think beyond that. What's the message of, what's the value statement, And I understand, be part of our community, but what does that mean? I'd rather you say something like, by volunteering with us, you can help our members minimize isolation by X%, right? Or like, what is that impact statement? And then what can they learn? Do you want to put a statement that's about benefits and value? You'll have an opportunity to learn ABC. And then how do you send that message? What is your vehicle to send the message? And then the 5 Ps, which we're going to talk about, marketing, which is MBA 101. So good messaging, again, these are slides you're going to have, is the statement in need. But when I say the statement in need, I don't mean we need you. You're still putting out there something, but you have to word it in a way that is attractive, right? Even if you can come up with something like, I think back to Nike, and when somebody just says, just do it, like everybody knows what that is. That was not their intention. They had a different intention on it, but like, think about all these products that of based on some simplicity of messaging, right? So just make sure your messaging adds the statement of need, but not like we need you, how they can get involved, and the value, the benefits to them, because I find that is very important. This is relationship building at this point, right? You're getting as much as they're getting. There are different recruitment methods, and there's no one particular recruitment method that works for one particular way. It depends, again, on who you're trying to reach, what you're trying to get volunteers to do, and what is most successful in your community. So in Toronto, there's like 50,000 Facebook pages. It all gets muddied up, but there are community-based ones. And I know that even in small towns, some of the Facebook pages are highly active and highly engaging, and people are willing to help through Facebook. But you have like volunteer recruitment platforms. So when I mean about that, Indeed, Charity Village, Volunteer Success, these are websites that post your volunteer opportunities. They're a little bit targeted because you can customize it, but you're dependent on the volunteer finding it. So I find there's a lot of organizations that are out there that know these. So we're all posting our positions on Charity Village and, volunteer centers or whatever it is, but not all the volunteers know that these sites are there. So you're dependent on the volunteer to find you. So it's a little bit passive in terms of recruitment. Word of mouth has always been, as far as I'm concerned, face-to-face, word of mouth, getting it out there, the most successful way to get volunteers. The number one reason people, and it still stands for the last 30 years, the reason why people don't volunteer is they haven't been asked. So I do believe that outreach is very powerful. But the question is, who are you reaching? What's the message? And are you actually doing the ask when you're doing it? I do find that volunteer coordinators will talk about the program, and kind of it's a passive answer afterwards. If you're interested, let me know, or here's some information. I'm all for the ask. Would you be interested in having a conversation next week a little bit further about this? And then just stop talking, right? And see what happens. Digital marketing is about, like I talked, the social media side of things. So what is the message you're getting out there? How often is the message getting out? It's really easy now to create a Facebook page and post things like regularly. But what I find that happens, and again, these are issues, and when I work with organizations on recruitment plans, The one major message I say to them is it's about how often. You've got to be doing this regularly. Our brains find validation when we see things more and more often. Like think about when you're scrolling on your phone, right? And you start watching things more and more and more, you become more and more interested. So you may not get them in the first couple of posts, but they'll start to look a little bit further, and then they'll start to look at the comments behind things. But you've got to kind of have a plan. And so you've got to gather information, things like volunteer stories, infographics, visuals, and not the canned ones. Like, like try and get as personal as you can or as authentic as you can. Did you know? So things like value statements, impact statements. I don't see very often a lot of information about the impact of volunteers. I see it in this kind of flowery way, but I want to see things that like make a difference. So 100 volunteers did X amount of hours, and this was the result of those X amount of hours. We need you to be, we want you to become one of those numbers. Like we want you to have an impact. This is the impact you're going to have. It's almost like, when you see these Planned Canadas where for $2.50 a day, you get to feed, and they show you the goat, they show you the family, and so you get it, right? So digital marketing is about that message is out there, but it's also about the amount of time you spend marketing. So you have to look at it as part of it. If it works for you, again, back to the role, back to the organization, back to the community. And then in-person outreach events, I mean, they're always successful. They still are. It's about that connection. So I don't devalue or undervalue things like volunteer displays, community outreach events. The more you can be out there representing, the more of an impact that you're having, right? The question then becomes, it's like things like these, sign up to be a volunteer sheet, then what happens, right? So I'd just love to be able to catch people as quickly as possible, because I've seen volunteers that sign up for like 10 different organizations at the same time as they're doing these displays. So, you're spending a lot of your time, and I don't know what the return on investment is. And print marketing still works in certain communities. There's a reason why real estate agents are still sending flyers, on a daily basis to my house, because I do look at them. The question then becomes, what is the message on that print? So again, don't devalue things like brochures and something takeaways, but it's for certain audiences. So certain audiences couldn't care less about that stuff, and they're just going to throw it out. So you have to, there's all these different kinds of recruitment methods. You have to decide at one point, what are you going to do? But you've got to plan. That's the whole trick, is you've got to plan. So I've given you a bit of a plan, which is a combination of the things that I've already talked about. So this almost can be like the framework of your plan. On one side, you're looking at all the things that are external, the things that are affecting your volunteer program. What is a barrier? What is a benefit? Because some of the stuff that you do has externally may have huge impact already. On the other side is internal things. Like I said, the organizational strategy, the culture, what are your goals? What are your operations? And then in the middle is the marketing plan. So understanding what your consumer needs, and the consumer is your volunteer. The consumer is also your client. It's a two-way street. Do your research. Spend your time to do research. If you can't do it, what a great volunteer role. Maybe there's somebody that would love to do some research. What's in your community? Where can you connect? And then you start looking at segmentation of the market. Okay, so what part of this market do you want to reach? Who's your target? What's the position, right? And then you talk about the product, the price, the promotion, the place, and we'll talk about that in a few minutes. Okay. Ensuring that your opportunities are appealing. I mean, obviously, the more appealing the opportunity to that volunteer, the better chances you have of being able to sell it. It's no different than if you go into a grocery store and what catches your eye and what doesn't catch your eye. So some of the things like I talked about are project-based, the ability to flexibility, giving people time to go away, come in, come out, virtual opportunities for leadership, We don't talk about that much. I don't see a lot of that in marketing. I think it's a great low-hanging fruit kind of concept. Is like part of our retention of volunteers is providing opportunities for leadership, succession planning, mentorship, coaching, right? So all of these added value things. So it's part of the planning process. So I talked a lot about the 5P. So this is like business 101 when it comes to selling, right? So the product, what are you offering? So for everybody, it's going to be different. And it's not just the opportunity of the role, but what else you're offering. Like I said, the benefits, the value, the impact, the learning, the recognition, the retention support. What is the offer? And then who are you exchanging this with? So you've got, this is what the offer is for volunteering, an opportunity to ABC with the ability to benefit to get DEF. And then who are the best people to exchange this? Like who's your target audience? That's the public. Promotion is, what do you want them to know? So again, it's like an onion. You're not gonna show them everything, right? So what do you want them to know to get them to apply on the application form, ask the questions, book the interview? So what is the promotion? What are you selling? What's the cost? So there is a cost to every volunteer role. Some of those costs are tangible, right? Parking, gas. I don't know if there's uniform costs. I don't know if there's training costs. There's also intangible time, relationships, emotions. So there is a cost to doing volunteer work. And so you have to consider what the cost is as you're kind of coming up with that plan. And then places, where do they get so where are they volunteering? Is it in the community? Is it virtual? Do they have to go a distance? And, like, are we offering up free parking? Are we offering up things like, it's a great environment. So, yeah, well, I had at one point, I was working in an organization, and it was a national organization, and some of the volunteers are coming into national office. And so part of kind of the onboarding process was to let volunteers know that they were working for the local volunteer program within a national office. The climate is very different in a national office. So volunteers would walk in, and I noticed they were like, people wouldn't say hi to them, or they would just be quick highs. And where the volunteer thinks that they're part of something, they're actually part of a part. So when I say the place is like the environment that they're working in, and what does that look like? So those are the 5 P's of marketing. As I mentioned, there's 2 types of marketing. There's target and mass marketing. Most of your focus should be on target. Mass, again, I would only use for one-off events, right? It just takes too much time to target market if you just need 100 people for a day once a year. Okay, that's mass marketing. Your biggest tool now is your website. Your website is your face. Okay, your website is your voice. It represents you. And when I say your website, I don't mean there's the whole website, but how difficult is it to find the volunteer page? I mean, I've looked at organizations' websites, and I've got to click 3 or 4 times before I actually get where I need to get. Is it buried under there? And then if it's buried under there, and it's not in the forefront, how are you going to get volunteers to that point, right? So what's on that homepage that will make them click onto the volunteer page? So that's question number 1. Question number 2 is there a way to get that volunteer tab up front and center? Question number 3 is, once they're on the volunteer page, what are you sharing with them? And I've looked at a lot of volunteer pages that are not really interactive, or they're very generic. So when I say generic, they're stock pictures, they're basic information, or there's a lot of white space. So that is, I call that prime real estate, right? Um, some of them are great. They'll show benefits, they'll show value. I've seen pages where you click in and you got the whole job description, like it's just daunting. And then I've seen where, just if you're interested in volunteering, here are the kinds of things you could be doing. It's a one-liner and then apply now. So your volunteer page is your dating page. That's what makes people, you want to give them some information that will get them to apply. And then once they apply, especially if they're applying online, one of the biggest mistakes we make in recruitment/marketing is the turnaround time from their interest to our response. The window is shortened. If they don't hear from you within 24 to 48 hours, they're gone. They're on to the next organization. And when I say hear from you, you don't need to start the process, but they want to know that you are going to reach out within 7 days or here in the meantime. I was actually just looking at somebody's website yesterday, and it says we will be in contact with you in the next 2 to 3 weeks. And that's about it. Okay. What I would have done is I would have added, in the meantime, check out this newsletter, that article, like something that keeps them engaged. So that turnaround time needs to be quick, right? Just there's got to be some kind of building of the relationship. So that's your website. Your website is your dating site. Kind of think Match.com, right? You're the volunteer program. How are you selling it? So you start there. Another tool, tool when you're thinking about marketing is concentrated circles. So this concentrated circles, I'm going to go back, and proximity charts. This is part of the brainstorming side of things. So concentrated circles are who are you connected with? So you're the center ripple. And as you do the ripples, who's closest to you? So you've got your family, you've got your doctor, you've got your religious institution, you've got the UPS guy that you see every single day. Like I'm friends with my mailman and I talk to him every day. How are you connected? And you'd be surprised if you take the time. If we were in person here, I would be giving you 10 minutes to take the time to do a brain dump of who are you connected to. You'd be surprised how big your circle is. Even the girl or the person at your local coffee shop that you go get your coffee every single morning and you have a chit chat with, do they even know what you do for a living? So you just don't know how you're connected. When I was working at Arthritis Society, I was in a big office tower, and 3 of the floors above me were Ernst Young, or one of the big accounting firms. And one day I was in the elevator, and there were these 2 guys talking, and they were talking about, they were being forced to do volunteer work for something, and he used the word forced. And I remember turning to him and going, "Oh, you just got on the wrong elevator." And so I stopped and I explained to him who I was and what I did. And did you know that this organization is like 2 floors below you? He said, no. I said, would you mind if I came up one day and just asked what kind of, what your volunteer potential is? And he went, sure. And he gave me his name, and there we go. There was a connection there. So things like how you're connected. So that is one tool that you can use. The other one is proximity charts. And I find this interesting too, and especially in smaller towns. When you drive from your home to your office, what are you passing? So are you passing a large manufacturing plant? Are you passing, 3 or 4 banks? What are you passing? Have you ever actually gone into those local places and said, this is who we are, this is what we need? Do you have an employee volunteer program? Is there a way to connect with you? So it's just another tool to use to think about your market target, right? And then there's the social media side of things. And I'm sure when we get into the conversation afterwards, you'll have some questions. But I think that if we don't get more active in social media, we are definitely falling behind. Because I mean, think about it, everything is social media right now. So you need to get your organization out there and visible, right? So how are you going to do it? If you don't know how to do it, then ask the questions or find a volunteer that can do it, or talk to your marketing person or your fundraising person, like who's out there, and have that conversation. Maybe you can just tag on to something else that's going on. Um, I don't have the specific answers. I kind of need the question, and then I can kind of give the specific answers. But nothing is off the table, right? These days, nothing is off the table. Some of the best practices, as you can see, strategy and execution, and I've seen this, been there, done it myself. It takes time to market your volunteer program. It is a process. It does not happen. You can't say, okay, this week I'm doing marketing and then forget about it for 6 months. It has to be ongoing. So you have to kind of look at what the year looks like. Where do you normally actively recruit volunteers? And then the other side of the coin is, when's the best time to recruit volunteers? So we know students are September, October, November for the holidays, and March, April before the summer comes. So going after students in June is absolutely useless because they've already got the summer plans. So you have to think about when the best time is to recruit certain groups of people. The closest you can get to a two-way communication, the higher the success rate. Be creative. Answer questions quickly. I'd say one of the complaints that I get on a regular basis is I reach out to an organization and nobody got back to me. What happens is they now start bad mouthing you, right? And I've seen it firsthand. Oh, I wouldn't volunteer there. They don't even bother getting back to me. That's the worst advertisement you can have, right? You want to be an organization that somebody's going to tell their neighbor or their friend, say, I just had the best experience. You should check them out, right? We all use recommendations, the value recommendations, right? And don't promise what you can't deliver. So things like, oh, we're going to get back to you, in 48 hours, and you don't. Like, that's a problem, because they went out of their way to actually fill out the application form. So they want to hear. Part of your target are things like, have you asked staff? Do staff know that you're looking for volunteers? Maybe they have connections. So under the concentrated circle, they may have connections. Do staff know that they're, and this is a me thing, may not be a you thing. Part of marketing volunteerism in an organization that is supported by volunteers, we're all in this together. So if you have roles that you need to fill, ask staff, right? Maybe they have connections. I don't believe, like I've always said, that the volunteer program's an octopus. We have arms in everywhere. So ensure that your staff know what you're looking for. Maybe they can be part of the process. And then do the work plan, analyze the risk factors. And consider the kinds of people, and we're going to talk more about this in the next presentation. This is more about different kinds of personalities and how they work together. But why I put this slide in here is also about what people want. So affiliators are very much the social people. So even as they're looking for the volunteer role, they're looking at the social aspect, the connection, the community. So think about the messaging that you're putting out there. Versus people who are more achievement focused are goal focused. So they want to see numbers. They want to say, okay, X amount of hours, you need me, X amount of hours, and this is the goal of the volunteer role. These are the tasks. And then power people are more about impact, right? These are people that don't normally get down in the trenches. They're more your connectors. So even from a marketing standpoint, people who have influence or power people can open up doors for you. So even what are your connections there? So think about even using people who you're connected to that have these types of personality traits. So people who are more affiliators are primarily like and are engaged in different kinds of groups, and they can be great ambassadors for you. Right? Power people usually have some connection high up of influence. You also have to consider, I'm just cognizant of time, of the different kinds of volunteers. So again, in the slides, research is showing that boomers, new retired, they really do connect to causes that they believe in. They want to make a contribution and they do want to share their skills, right? They want to do something meaningful, but the giant question is, what does meaningful mean to them? And sometimes you just need to ask them the question. What you may find meaningful may not be the same thing that they do. Right. So I've given you a couple of slides on that. And then young adults, youth volunteering, they don't have as much history. They may never have volunteered before. They may never have had the experience, but they are coming, right? And they're very smart. They're emerging thinkers, they're high-tech thinkers, and they have a really interesting perspective on things. And we call it, it's interesting, especially in the high school and the colleges, it's a pack mentality. You get one, if it's successful, you get a bunch. They are amazing ambassadors. So if you can engage in the schools, and when I say in the schools, like for me, target marketing is get to those clubs, right? They're the ones that are doing the extracurricular things. The other group to get to is, if you're looking for specific skills, the professors. They have these connections with their students in ways that the student council or the college volunteer program don't have access to. So even within schools, there are these layers. So getting down into those layers. You have to consider, are your marketing materials reflective of your audience? Like I said to you previously, does your website represent what you want to get out there? Are the positions of interest to volunteers? And if not, there is a struggle there. And I'm not devaluing, we need to have volunteers to do certain things. But if you can't get the volunteers to do it, then my question is, what do you do? Right? What's the tangible and intangible incentives, value, benefits, return on investment, impact? And are there things that you can even shift around? So maybe the role is, yay big, but a volunteer only can do a little portion of it. Can 3 people do that role? Can 2 people do that role? Can you do, start with part A and work your way to part B and part C? Are there ways that you can be flexible in your positions that may be more attractive to volunteers? So again, it's all part of that planning process, but it's also part of the relationship building with your community, right? There's no bad marketing. Like sometimes it's just trial and error, but the more you're out there, the better your chances are. That's for sure. The more exposure you have, the more you're talking about impact, benefit, values. Visually, we process more with our eyes than our mouths. So communication wise, if they can see things that are repetitive, that they kind of like, oh, that's interesting. Oh, I see that again. That also helps with muscle memory. Anyhow, we're at 2:30. I hope I gave you a lot. Like I said, here are my 3 takeaways. Create a plan. So sit back and look at, what does your year look like? When do you want to market for what? What are the roles that you're looking at? And then come up with a plan. Part 2, look at your website. It's got to be attractive, right? Look at other people's websites and see what you like. It's probably the biggest tool you have in your toolkit is your website, because that's what everybody does. Everybody checks everybody out, right? So there's all this kind of like, stuff going on that you don't even know what's happening. And 3, look at how you can better engage in social media. So thank you. We can open it up.